On today's show, we talk to author Richard Stone, Herring Pond Wampanoag Tribe Chairwoman Melissa Ferretti, hear original poetry, and talk about upcoming things to do in our area. We're glad you're here. Let's get started. To learn more about Melissa Ferretti and get her guidance on how we can better show up as a community for Native peoples, Tiff sat down with the Herring Pond Wampanoag Tribe Chairwoman on our Open Here podcast.
I'm with Melissa Ferretti, Chairwoman for the Herring Pond Wampanoag Tribe. Welcome, so great to have you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm excited to be here with you all.
We're excited to have you. Let's jump in. We're definitely going to talk about the tribe, but I just wanted to get some information about you first. What's your background? Where did you grow up?
Sure, yeah. So I'm a Plymouth girl. I was raised in Cedarville by an elder of my tribe, Verna Harding. Verna was born in 1905, and I like to say that because it gives you an idea of being raised by someone of that age at the time I was born in 68. So I'm raised in Cedarville my entire life, educated at Plymouth schools. It was Plymouth Carver school system at the time. Moved to New Hampshire in my senior year and graduated there. And I was only there a very short time because home was calling me. Became a mom fairly young. My first son was born right after my 21st birthday. So I spent a lot of time being a mom for a good 8 years or so, doing that thing. And about 30 is when I decided to sort of figure out what I wanted to be when I grow up. And I started taking some classes at 4Cs down Cape and worked for Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe for a few years. And then I went into real estate. And here I am, 2003. I've been licensed since, and I'm currently affiliated with Jack Conway and Company from the Cape Cod Sandwich office. And I am, as we know, I'm the chairwoman of the Herring Pond Wampanoag Tribe. I'm on my fourth term for the tribe. I just started in January, my fourth term. And I'm also on my last year of my first term as a select board member in the town of Bourne, in which I now live.
You're a busy woman. How do you sleep?
Not often, and not well.
It's all right. You're running on excitement and a robust life. I know it's hard because the Herring Pond Wampanoag Tribe has such a long, vibrant history, but can you kind of give us a brief overview of the tribe?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we all know the Pilgrim story, and we all know, that part of history. But the Herring Pond people have documented history since the arrival of the Pilgrims. We were written very early on in the historical records as the Herring Pond Indians, mostly referenced. We were part of John Cotton's congregation, and over the years, the Herring Pond tribe petitioned the government, the state, and several dozen times at least to assert our rights to either the herring or to assert our rights to the land, or are concerned about, land that may have been transferred without our knowledge. Post-contact, I always say, the traditional homelands of the Herring Pond tribe, it consisted of about 3,000 acres. So 3 separate lots, mostly in Plymouth and partly in Bourne. The biggest lot we call the Great Lot, which is it's from the borders of Great Herring Pond, extends all the way out to Pine Hills. And that was the biggest parcel. That was about 2,600 acres. Our 200-acre meeting house parcel, in which our meeting house still sits today down there in Cedarville, that is now dwindled to 0.43 of an acre, but it's still in our possession. And the Herring River lot, in which some of our families still live today, that is down in Bournedale, and that was 400 acres. So, of which we own about 7 acres now total.
Wow.
So we're working to obviously get some land back so
Yeah.
that we can conserve it and protect the wildlife that lives there. But we're still here, walking amongst you, as you can see.
Yeah, you are. What kind of services do you provide for tribal members?
Well, we're working hard on, every day we work to grow and to get different pots of funding that are available to provide services for our tribe. Unfortunately, being a state tribe, the services that we're afforded are not as lucrative as it may be as if we were federally recognized, of course. So the services currently we are working on, we have a food sovereignty program that we've been working pretty diligently on. That's been a great experience. We have a traditional ecological knowledge project that we've been working on. And a lot of our resources currently we have to outsource because we just don't have the capacity internally to provide those services. We would look to our sister tribes possibly for some services that might be, that we may not be able to offer internally for Herring Pond. We would look to them or some of the urban Indian organizations as well. So we are busy growing, and we're doing that at a very rapid pace. Which is good and bad, right, in some senses, but we are getting there, yeah.
How would you describe Herring Pond as a community? I'm sure you're a very tight-knit community.
Well, yes, of course. I think, our people, it's unique being a chairperson because, your family is your constituents, right? So we love our family. But when you have to get your family in the room and you work very hard to do different things, we don't always see eye to eye. So it can be it's a great experience, and we are a tight-knit community, but we also face the same sort of issues, I think, that any family does. I would say we're a brave and resilient people. I think I even quote that on our website, that we are not a conquered people. We're brave and resilient people, well aware of our place in history. So our people are very proud. Our elders are very strong and mighty. Our youth are just amazing. We've got a lot of really amazing young adults, emerging adults. We've got a lot of littles in Herring Pond, which is really great because we always talk about our future generations. So we're a strong people.
A lot of people have jobs where they're not necessarily personally connected to that job. What does being chairwoman to the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe mean to you?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, the reason that I started this work was when I look back and I think about Verna, and, I remember the stories that she told me and how difficult it was for her during the time that she grew up. I mean, you can imagine, born in 1905, right, at a time of, a tough time for a woman of color. And for me, I go back and I think about her, and I feel like I owe it to her to do this work. So it is very personal for me. And I probably have a more emotion into it than most, as you said, than most jobs, because it's personal. And my motivation really does come from a need to make Verna proud, and to, for her legacy and that of the ancestors to not be buried in history or buried in books and have our history erased. So
You just got a very big honor. You were recognized by the Massachusetts Commission on the Status of Women. Can you tell us about that? How cool are you?
Wow, I was shocked. So, we go through life, and I always say, and I still say, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, right? So and I say this when I do talks to youth or others, that, we go through life, especially as women in this society, and we often struggle with, imposter syndrome. Am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Do I really know that? Should I take that leap? Should I be doing this work? Can I do it? And we always doubt ourselves. So we go through life that way. But we keep going, right? We keep treading, and we don't realize that people are noticing and watching. And so State Representative David Vieira, when I got the notice that he had, nominated me for the award, I was just thrilled, and it just meant a lot, because for one, I mean, I've been nominated for seats on committees and things like that, but I had never been nominated for such a prestigious award through the state. And it was just amazing because we don't see ourselves the way others see us sometimes. So it's important that we sometimes take a look and give ourselves a little pat on the back, right? So for me, I think I needed it because you go on and we're just so motivated to make change and, I'm not going to quit. I want to keep going and get this done. And we don't take a second to say, you did a good job today and give yourself a boost. So it really did. It really was good timing because this work can be it can be exhausting sometimes, and it can be defeating in many ways doing this work, especially in Indian country. And because so many people don't understand Native people.
Is that one of the challenges that you face most, is just misunderstanding?
Well, I think for us, overall, I think for Native people, I would say, yeah, sure. I think a lot of times people just don't understand. And people are afraid sometimes, and I get this a lot. They're like, oh, I just didn't want to say it wrong, or I was so afraid I was going to insult you, or, say it this way or that way. It is a challenge, but I think people are at least mindful of it. I think the biggest challenges that we face as Herring Pond is constantly having to tell people who we are, right? And we've been here. Our history doesn't lie. The history is there. It's well written. And even in settings where we're in Indian country, as a state tribe, you get marginalized a lot. We even get, that's the hardest part for me, is constantly having to explain to people who we are. And just because they're like, they don't understand, and they're like, well, we only know the federally recognized tribes. So there's this myth that if you're not federally recognized, that you're not a tribe. And that's not entirely accurate. It's accurate in some ways because you can't create a new tribe. Tribes are supposed to be consistent and have continuity, and they are supposed to be, that's how it works. But to be a tribal government, the federal government doesn't identify us. We don't let the federal government identify us. Federal recognition is a political decision, and it does offer benefits that, of course, we are working toward as a state tribe. But our the biggest challenge is really having to explain ourselves all the time, but also just finding ourselves being denied benefits, and just often you feel like you're looked down upon because you haven't been able to obtain that federal recognition yet. And it's such nonsense. Our federal sister tribes, they know who we are. The history is well written. So the hardest part is when we encounter that mindset from whether it be Native people or non-Native people who really don't understand. Again, it goes right back to do the research, read the history, and then So I think for us, it's really, we're definitely hindered and harmed in many ways simply because the Commonwealth of Massachusetts just does not have a legislative process to vet their tribes. Many states do, but having a legislative process protects the tribes, and it actually funnels funds to the tribes that otherwise the state would pay for. So it actually helps the state. So we're working toward that, and that's a huge issue for us, and that's one of my biggest, one of my bucket list items is to get that recognition done.
How can non-Native people show up for the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe? How can we be there for you as a community?
Wow. I think that when we're working, we've had such amazing, Plymouth has been, I'll say this, when we asked the town to return Dinah Path to us back in 2019, we were scared to death to walk into that town meeting and ask, right? We shouldn't be, right? It was our land. We weren't asking for something that wasn't ours in the first place, but we were frightened of what our reception would be. And we were welcomed, and we were the town of Plymouth welcomed us with open arms, and we got a unanimous decision to give us that land back, right? To deed it back to the tribe, because that was the right thing to do. So I think the town of Plymouth is already doing that. Just that alone gave us that hope. So I think today, like right now, we're working toward land acknowledgements that they do, what they use. I know currently, I think it's only Open Space who does a land acknowledgement, but I think there's the DEI committee and the League of Women Voters is working toward trying to get the land acknowledgement in more of the departments. And it just becomes it goes right back to educating themselves. I think the best thing that people can do to show up is to learn the history and to know who we are. I think that's really the greatest honor that we could have, is to be acknowledged by the people and our peers and the people who are neighbors.
What do you think the future holds for you and the tribe?
Well, I hope that before I leave this earth, I do hope that we have our recognition, so that I can go to my grave and know that my grandchildren are going to be able to keep the continuity and to continue this legacy on. I mean, it's an important history. Plymouth, right? We talk about America's hometown. The history of this country, it exists because of our people and because of Herring Pond Indians and Mashpee and Aquinnah and all of the other tribes locally. So I see big things for Herring Pond. It's a lot of work, but I see great things for us in the future.
Well, if there's anyone who can do it, it's you. You are a Wonder Woman. Congratulations again on your recognition. Very well deserved. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
The Pembroke Arts Festival has been celebrating South Shore artists since 1968. Pembroke's brand new community center will be the proud venue for the 57th annual Pembroke Arts Festival on Saturday, August 10th and Sunday, August 11th. Don't miss the musical performances, artists in action, a scholarship raffle, art exhibitions, and art for sale, a space dedicated to the works of young artists, and an area for kids' crafts. Are you a young or adult artist? You still have time to submit your work for the juried art competition, when over $1,500 in awards and prizes will be presented. The deadline is July 10th. Visit PembrokeArtsFestival.org. What does it really mean when an animal is an endangered species? Helping Endangered Animals is an informative and fun live animal program that will shed light, not fur, on this question on Monday, July 22nd in the Duxbury Free Library's Merry Room. Joy, from Joys of Nature, will talk about endangered species of New England, the world, and the reasons why so many animals and their habitats are disappearing. She will also suggest actions we can take to make sure the critters we share Earth with survive, getting some help from real live animal friends. The event is ideal for children age 6 and up and begins at 10:30 a.m. All children must be accompanied by a caregiver. Registration opens on July 8th at 10 a.m. on the library's website. Founder of Mayflower Event News, Richard A. Stone is the author of Project Mayflower, Building and Sailing a 17th Century Replica. He joined us in the Local Scene studios to talk about this locally and worldwide historically relevant subject.
So Project Mayflower was the undertaking in the mid-1950s to build and sail a recreation of the original Pilgrim ship, 1620 Pilgrim ship, from Plymouth, England to Plymouth, America, to Plymouth, Massachusetts. And it was done in the mid-1950s. It was an enterprise that had both an English component and an American component. So from the very beginning, not only were the Pilgrims British ending up in the United States, this undertaking was a British-American undertaking pretty much from the start. The original ship that it was modeled after, truly, they came over, they withstood tremendous hardships. Half of them died within the first few months that they were here, but they left an indelible mark on the democratic process when they wrote their aspirations on a piece of paper called the Mayflower Compact. The second ship says that countries on either side of the Atlantic have something in common. the United States and Great Britain have a great bond that goes back 400 years to 1620. And that bond, those two pillars of democracy, a symbol of that unity, is seen in the second Mayflower, in Mayflower 2. She is a tribute to unity and cooperation. It's a tangible symbol of democracy. So one of the things that was driving Charlton when he did the boat, when he decided to do it, he had seen the power of symbolism in the Second World War. And he knew that symbols traveled further than words, because not everybody can read in every language, and it's not as universal. So his idea with the boat is that if I can build this replica, sail it across the sea, the International Press Corps is going to have to keep track of it. They're going to report on it. And as they report on it, they will tell the story of people that sailed it, their desire to have just and equal laws for the general good. They wanted democracy, and that's why he did it. He did it as a symbol, a tangible symbol. You look at that, as good as a flag, you have that boat. It's cool to see the ship. She's little. So I think the reaction a lot of people have is how small the boat is. It's a small craft. It's wonderful to see. And when you know something about the navigation and how they got here, it's pretty amazing. And of course, Mystic did a fabulous job renovating, repairing it. Plymouth, Whit Perry, who's the captain, does a fabulous job with his crew when they go out sailing. They maintain it wonderfully, and I think they really treat the ship as a national treasure. And it is a national treasure. As you know, 2 years ago it was declared a National Historic Site by the Department of the Interior for the 2020 400th anniversary. When they had the Plymouth 400 here, they had a similar celebration in England. So that voyage, this story, when we had our 400th anniversary, they were having the same thing in Plymouth, England. It's a story that connects two nations, England and the United Kingdom and America, very tightly. And those descendants, there are 30 plus million of them, and they're all over the place. When you look at this country and what's coming up in 2 years, the 250th anniversary of it, and we say, despite all of our differences, wherever we are on that spectrum, we all started at one place. And that place was on a cold shore off of the coast of Plymouth, saying, we would like just and equal laws. We're going to work together. Native Americans worked with them, which is why people remember that ship. Because one of my friends says, well, why do they talk about the Mayflower? There must have been lots of ships like that. And there were thousands of ships that came over. But what that group, achieved, and what they inscribed in that document, lives to this day. And so when you look at the second Mayflower that's sitting in Pilgrim Harbor, it's really a tribute to unity and teamwork and optimism and what can be done together. And while it was done originally as a tribute to past, contributions, sacrifice, World War II, it really became an active participant in mending wounds between the United States and Britain at a moment when they really needed a healer. And that boat was it. So what inspired me to write this story was the photo of Mayflower 2 entering New York Harbor on July 1st, 1957, the National Geographic photograph. So when I first saw the photo, I thought it was a fake. I thought it was a Photoshop. I mean, there's a picture of this boat going to New York Harbor. There's a blimp. The sky is beautiful. It looked too good to be true. And I thought it was a fake, but it wasn't. It was a real picture. And so that drew me in. I thought, what's the story behind this picture? And then when the ship was relaunched in Mystic, Connecticut, Nathaniel Philbrick said, Mayflower is more than just a famous ship. She's a famous ship in her own right. But he didn't say why. And I thought, well, there must be a reason. So I wanted to answer that question. Why is she a famous ship? And why was a Navy blimp flying over the Mayflower in New York Harbor? And so that image, that speech, made me start to look. And as I began looking, I realized that there was a great story here, an underdog story, the Warwick-Charlton story, a story of partnership and collaboration, the Hornblower-Charlton story, a story of courage, teamwork, and optimism. And I guess the final encouragement I have had to write it came when the Mayflower 2 was relaunched in 2019. So it was needed to go back to Mystic Seaport for repairs. They did a spectacular job. And when it was put in the water in September of 2019, Nathaniel Philbrick, the famous author of Mayflower, that many people have read, gave the keynote speech, and he said, you know, the Mayflower 2, she's more than just the replica of a famous ship. She's a famous ship in her own right, ... And being trained as a journalist, I thought, well, why is she a famous ship? It has to be more than the varnish and the sails and the paint. Why is she famous? And so I found out why she's famous. It's the story of my book. It's the story of Project Mayflower, building and sailing that 17th century replica.
You can find Project Mayflower everywhere books are sold. Agatha Christie's famed character, Hercule Poirot, said, "The impossible cannot have happened. Therefore, the impossible must be possible in spite of appearances." Meaning, there is an explanation for everything. Like the reason you are suddenly feeling drawn to visit the Spire Center sometime between Friday, July 5th and Sunday, July 21st. Here is a clue. The Americana Theatre Company is presenting a theatrical production of the classic thriller Murder on the Orient Express. The story? The year is 1934. An American tycoon is found murdered upon a train heading from Istanbul to Western Europe. Who done it? Purchase your tickets online at americanatheater.org to find out. Performances are Fridays and Saturdays at 7 p.m. and Sundays at 2 p.m. For many students, more socially focused and less structured activities like lunch and recess are the most intimidating and difficult to navigate. To help make these class schedule blocks more rewarding for kids, Kingston Parks and Recreation is offering Recess Camp with Mrs. Day and Mrs. Tresca at Kingston Elementary School. It will be a week of fun playground games, team-building activities, and crafts designed to help kids in kindergarten through second grade build the confidence and social skills necessary for making new friends and having positive experiences on the playground and in the lunchroom. All kids at the end of the program will go home with a Recess Expert hat and certificate. The camp runs Monday through Friday, August 12th through the 16th. There are 2 time slots available, 8 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. or 11 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Cost is just $200 for Kingston residents and $220 for non-residents. It's Christmas in July at the Pembroke Community Center Craft Fair on July 20th. The summer sun will shine down on Santa in swim trunks for this Yuletide Arts and Crafts Sale fundraiser, with all after-cost proceeds benefiting the Pembroke Historical Society. Get a head start on some holiday shopping, even if the holiday happens to be your summer vacation. In addition to vendors selling crafts, there will be a raffle hosted by the Friends of the Pembroke COA. The community center is at 128 Center Street in Pembroke. The Christmas in July Craft Fair starts at 12 noon and will be glowing with sunshiny Christmas cheer until 4 p.m. The second annual Plymouth Poetry Festival, presented by America's Hometown Laureates, took place over several days this month, highlighting the work of dozens of local poets. Here's Sheila Mullen-Timon in a reading of her original work.
So meanwhile, will Sheila Mullen-Twyman come up, please?
I love this little house. I hope we have more poetry here. Can't hint. First poem is called Postcard from the Dig. She's like any other woman, if being 900 years old can be considered common. Disentombed from between layers of boggy earth, her skin golden and bronze hard, not notable in dress or station of life, ordinary except for one oddity, a big toe made of dark wood strapped to her left foot. It's a perfectly carved prosthesis with a bas-relief toenail that never had to be trimmed. Scratches on the bottom, little pebble indents show that she walked on it for some time before she died. But it must have tripped her up occasionally, for it was much larger, much longer than a big toe should be. Who carved this strange artificial part? Was it fashioned out of proportion, larger than life, so it would never wear down? An extended life warranty, so to speak? Was the carver a simpleton or simply inept? Was it whittled in cruel jest or sadly an imitation of life? Perhaps her flesh and blood toe was an aberration, even before some gangrenous wound caused its removal, a giant congenital defect that dangled precariously beyond the length of her sandal, a bloated object of derisive laughter that made the mere act of walking to the well each day a painful journey, fraught with taunts and humiliations. Perhaps this simple woman of the bar became extraordinary after her amputation, a sorceress able to whip off her magic appendage, delight small children, horrify others to shrink in silence. I have one more. I live near the beach, and there are a whole bunch of Rosa rugosa bushes at the back of the particular beach I go to. And I want to be a beach rose, live with dune grasses, spread my thorny canes over nesting terns, so crows and mice cannot snack on their downy broods. Call myself Rosa, Rosa rugosa, with deep pink petals that unfold slowly to lay bare my golden center, twin to the morning sun. Whirl my heady fragrance toward the sea, and a spindrift will mist me with brawny cadenzas. I will be Rosa, with the swaying hips, lustrous rose hips, large brick red sea tomatoes. Hey, Rosa, they'll say, you're some tomato. I'd like to sip your sweet rosehip wine. And when my wild beach rose days grow short, my hips grow old and wrinkled, I will ride rhapsodic on a wave's foamy crest. I will flee into the deep with my white-capped lover. Thank you.
To see more from the Plymouth Poetry Festival, visit the Hometown Laureates YouTube page. The Plymouth Family Resource Center has been a beacon of support in the community for 4 years, providing free programs, referral services, support groups, and all kinds of resources at no cost to families in need. The community is invited to join them in celebrating their 4th anniversary at a carnival-themed community party on Wednesday, July 31st. From 12 to 3 p.m., there will be Midway-style skill games, raffles, music, food, and more to be announced closer to the day. Kids will have the opportunity to play in a bounce house and get their faces painted. Everything is completely free, and the invitation is open to everyone who would like to come to the festivities. The Plymouth Family Resource Center is at 433 Court Street in Plymouth. Babysitting, a great way for teenagers to foster a sense of responsibility, learn how to care for another person, and make a little pocket money. On Wednesday, July 31st, the Pembroke Public Library is hosting the Safe Sitter Introductory Course, when behavior management, child care routines, and basic child development will be covered. At the end of class, every participant will have the knowledge to care for children safely and receive a certificate of completion. The class starts at 2:40 p.m. and will wrap at 4:30. Registration fee is $25 cash or check. Interested students should register in person at the Pembroke Public Library. Jesse James and the Pinkerton Raid Tour will make a stop at the Duxbury Free Library on Tuesday, July 23rd, as part of the library's 2024 Summer Folk Music Series. Singer Jesse James DeConto is a natural storyteller and songwriter who blends a lyrical palette of observations, personal and political, to create a vivid musical document of the world around him. Music magazine Under the Radar describes the band as jangling, warm, unadorned, beauty within the simplicity, as if flipping through a worn photo book. And Up to the Here music calls their sound a lush fusion of indie folk, Americana, and soul, packed with great storytelling. This is an evening of indie Americana folk you don't want to miss. The concert starts at 6 p.m. and will last for about an hour. No registration is required. We are facing a crisis of biodiversity loss, the subject of a presentation by Amy Meltzer on Thursday, July 25th from 6 to 7 p.m. at the Pembroke Public Library. Animals, plants, fungi, and microorganisms, the relationships among Earth's diversity of life forms are interdependent and essential to the other's survival. In addition to discussing the crisis we face now, Amy will delve into the evolutionary history of our area's native plants, insects, birds, and fungi, how they all work together to survive, and how what you do in your backyard garden can have an immensely positive effect on the entire ecosystem. Amy Meltzer is an active member of Grow Native Massachusetts and holds positions on the research team and the Natural Solutions Working Group of Elders Climate Action. Come learn how growing native plants using ecological landscape practices in your own garden will help to reverse the loss of biodiversity in our area. Visit the Pembroke Public Library website to learn more. Pilgrim Hall Museum's 2024 Speaker Series is proud to welcome Dr. Patrick Brown of the Plymouth Antiquarian Society for Plymouth in the Civil War Era, a historical talk about Plymouth's involvement in the Civil War. Learn about the military units formed in town and how the war altered the lives of women and men in their everyday lives. This Wednesday, July 24th event starts at 6 p.m. with some light refreshments and a social hour before the lecture begins at 7 p.m. Tickets are only $10 per person, or $5 if you're a member. Students with ID get in for free. The 2024 Speaker Series is generously sponsored by Tiny & Sons Auto Glass. Our collective voices can be a catalyst for change. The necessity to speak up and create the change you want to see is a personal responsibility we all shoulder. On Friday, July 26th at 9 a.m., the Massachusetts Senior Action Council is hosting an outreach event. This statewide senior-led grassroots organization addresses social, health, and public policy issues affecting the older population and are inviting seniors and allies to meet representatives from MSAC and voice concerns about issues affecting the senior community. MSAC is a statewide organization with over 1,100 members and 30 affiliated groups and has been fighting for social justice for over 4 decades. Come down to the Pembroke Senior Center to meet representatives from MSAC and let your voice be heard. And that, my friends, wraps this episode of What's Good and Good to Know in our area. Our show will be on hiatus for the next few weeks, but we're still out in the community and we'll see you right back here in August. Thank you for watching and happy 4th of July. For more of what's good and good to know on the South Shore of Massachusetts, hit the subscribe button. And thank you for watching.